welcome to 10-Minute Prayer School. We're so glad that you have joined us, and today we have a very wonderful teaching. In fact, this is one of those teachings I wish I knew these things a long time before I discovered them, because it would have made my prayer life and the answers to prayer a lot easier to obtain. We're going to discuss blockages to answered prayers. This is a subject that I covered in my book, The Power of Persistent Prayer, and I gave various reasons why our prayers might not being answered. And so this is like one of the most often questions people will say to me. Doesn't God hear me when I pray? Is he listening to me? Of course he hears you. You know why? He loves you and wants you to spend time with him. He's a loving Father, and he wants to answer your prayers. Mark 11:25 and 26 says, "And when you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father who is in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father who is in heaven forgive you." One of the most serious blockages to answered prayers is unforgiveness. Unforgiveness. Psalm 66:18 says, "If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me." That's strong, isn't it? That's strong biblical language. The Lord will not hear me. I was thinking about that the other night, and I was just praying and asking the Lord, Lord, do I have any unforgiveness? Is there anyone that I need to forgive, or any situation? And the Holy Spirit just began to show me some things that had happened. You know, sometimes life just moves by us kind of in a flash. We're so busy. We're running here and there. We're trying to, just get the kids fed, just, take out the trash, not get overwhelmed, make sure the kids get the food they need, or we get to our job on time. Life just presses in on us. However, during our daily time, during our daily living, things happen to us. Things that are out of our control, circumstances that are out of our control, and they can hurt us. And sometimes we don't think, well, I need to forgive that person, but we do. Life comes at us fastly. So how do we get rid of unforgiveness? What do we do when we have unforgiveness? Well, number one, spend quality time seeking the Lord. You can't just assume that you're spiritually astute enough that something happens to you and you immediately say, oh, I forgive him, God. I forgive them, God. Because perhaps you're caught up in the heat of the emotion. Sometimes people that you love the most can wound you the most, and you need to forgive them. It doesn't mean you don't love them. I remember years ago thinking, well, the only people I need to forgive are those who wounded me so horribly. But that's not so. There's little things that happen to us. Maybe in a marriage situation. Maybe you feel misunderstood. You need to forgive your spouse. Maybe your own children have hurt you sometime. I know it's hard to believe that the sweetest, most precious children on the face of the earth can hurt you. But even children can hurt your feelings. One time I was in a service, and a woman came up to me and said, I have to forgive my baby. Now, I had to pause and think about that a minute. What? You have to forgive your baby? I said, yes, I am not able to sleep, and my baby is crying and crying and crying. And I realized that I'm getting resentment built up inside me. And she said, I know it's not rational. How crazy it is that, you would feel resentment towards a little baby. But she said, I want to forgive my child. And she did. And I said, well, how do you feel? And she says, I feel much better, thank you. You see, life can hit us fast. Maybe your children have disappointed you. Maybe you had dreams for them, and maybe they chose a different path. Maybe they didn't do, what you wanted or needed to do. Maybe you sent them to college for one thing, and then they didn't even work in that that field that you helped them study for, and then you still had promised to pay the bills, and you feel very caught. You may feel like they didn't keep up their part of the bargain, and so why should you keep up your part of the bargain? But whatever it is, things need to be prayed over. You need to keep a clean account with God and with others. Point 2, make a list of people who have transgressed against you. Spend time with the Lord. You know, some of you may never have had a time where you, in a concerted way, sat down with God and went through your life. Maybe you need to begin with your childhood and say, okay, I need to forgive. Maybe you need to forgive a teacher. Maybe you need to forgive your own parents, your father or your mother. Maybe they weren't good parents, or maybe they were neglectful, or maybe they just didn't know how to be a parent at all. And you know, as an adult, you can rationalize all these things and you can think, well, they didn't know, but it still hurt you. I really sense the power of the Holy Spirit upon this conversation. Ask God, Lord, what do I need to forgive? You know, I was a preacher's child, and so Dad did a lot of pioneering work. And one day I was talking to my daddy. He was a very wise man, and I was depressed. You know, depression is frozen anger. And so I said, God, I was praying before I talked to Dad. He said, God, just show me what's wrong with me. And my dad said to me, you have unforgiveness in your life. You need to forgive the churches where I pastored. And I began to think of the stories. I remember when I was a little girl how a certain church, the church leadership got together and voted that essentially my mother was a bad mother because she couldn't keep her children quiet in church. We were tiny and we were rowdy. And so, you know, I had taken up offense for that. I had taken up an offense for the way they treated my parents. And my daddy, my preacher daddy, looked at me and he said, honey, I forgave them a long time ago. You don't have grace to carry this burden. God will deal with what they did. And so I did. I made a list of all the churches Dad had pastored, the people in those churches, and I felt a heavy load lifted off of me after that time. You weren't meant to carry that load. Oh, I just feel the presence of God in such a sweet way. He wants to set you free. You know, the truth sets us free. So make your list. And point 3, ask the Holy Spirit to show you not only offenses against you, but just like I told in that story, offenses against those you love. It's possible to take an offense against the way people treated your mom, your dad, your brother, or even a friend. In fact, one day I was praying with my sister, and she was forgiving different people, and as she'd forgive, I'd go, I forgive them too, God. I forgive them too, because, you know, I realized that they had hurt my little sister, and I was upset. You see, I was upset, but God didn't give me grace to walk in that kind of thing. So we needed to forgive so I could be forgiven. Unforgiveness is an open door for the enemy to attack you. You want to shut those doors. I remember many years ago, the first time I went to Argentina, I was in my late 30s and I'd gone to preach. And when I got home, I received a phone call from a very dear friend who said, you just, shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You have no business going down to Argentina. You shouldn't be going down there teaching on spiritual warfare. You don't know what you're doing. I was devastated. And what happened was I actually started to get sick. And I not only felt sick, I felt like I was dying. And I realized this wasn't a natural thing. This was something spiritual. It was death trying to attack me. And so I told Mike, I feel like I'm dying, like a spirit of death or something that's attached to me. And so I asked the Holy Spirit to show me what is going on here. And he showed me that phone call, and I forgave. And Mike called intercessors and prayed for me, and God just instantly healed me. I mean, it was like 1 second to the next. 1 minute I couldn't get off the couch. I was very ill, and the next moment I was perfectly well. Oh, there's power in forgiveness. You know, today, Spend time with the Lord after this prayer school. Ask God to heal you and forgive, and He will answer your prayers.